Hi. Today we'll be talking about the importance of a visual schedule for children on the spectrum or otherwise. Imagine a scenario where you're entertaining expected guests. You are well prepared. You're clear about what is expected of you. आपने इस ओकेजन के लिए बहुत सारी तैयारियां की हैं. And it all ends well with the guests and you both physically and emotionally connected and happy. Now imagine sudden guests or any sudden event, maybe your husband telling you to visit his boss's birthday party for which you're totally unprepared. And I imagine your face will be something like this, or perhaps worse. The suddenness of it might even destabilize you. You don't know so many things. क्या इस बर्थडे पार्टी में आपको कोई गिफ्ट ले जाना है? आप कभी भी इस बॉस से नहीं मिले. What are you going to talk to him about? How are you going to behave with him? What kind of a dress are you going to wear? So obviously, you end up being anxious and you might even have a fight with your husband. And the evening may turn out not so well. Point being, humans thrive. सक्सीड करने के चांसेस किसी भी ह्यूमन के लिए तब ज़्यादा होते हैं जब आपकी तैयारी पूरी होती है. हम हर वक्त एक शेड्यूल में होते हैं, कभी कभी प्लान करके एंड एट अदर टाइम्स ऑटोमेटिकली. We are always aware of the fact that our entire life is broken down into minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and years, seasons, even good times and bad times. हमारा एक single day, even a single day, even that follows a structure. वो एक structure में बंधा होता है. सुबह उठना है, ड्रेस अप होना है, काम पर जाना है, we have to have lunch, come back home, maybe go for a walk, do some yoga, spend some quality time with friends and family, and then have dinner and go to sleep. Life has a certain predictability. कब क्या करना है, कैसे करना है, how you supposed to behave with other people, इन बातों की क्लैरिटी भी होती है. और हम हर काम कैसे और कितनी देर में करना है, हम किन एक्सपेक्टेशंस में बंधे हैं, ये भी हमें पता होता है. We understand that we need to wait for the good things in life to happen with patience and let the not so good things or boring stuff in our life bother us so much. हम ये भी एंटिसिपेट कर पाते हैं कि आज मंडे है, मंडे चला जाएगा. It will take 24 hours. We know what 24 hours mean. And after 6 days, we know what 6 days mean. We will have another Sunday. We don't have to ask anybody about that. We are able to appreciate that. And that's what keeps us calm throughout the week. We are able to wait and not be too agitated by it being a Monday or maybe any other undesirable thing or activity or day. लाइफ में स्ट्रक्चर फॉलो करके, गोल्स अचीव करके, एक्सपेक्टेशंस पर खरे उतरकर हम अपनी लाइफ में सक्सीड करने के लिए मोटिवेटेड भी होते हैं और इसकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग भी होती है हमें. We know that even after so much predictability and structure and expectations and clarity, there are going to be sudden things in our lives. Life is not going to be constantly simple and boring and predictable. It is going to get complex and non-regular at certain times. कभी कभी डॉक्टर्स अपॉइंटमेंट्स आएंगे, कभी कभी सडन गेस्ट्स आएंगे, कभी-कभी सडन विजिट्स हमें करने पड़ेंगे। But we do have the mental strength and adaptability and flexibility to be able to cope and understand with these situations. What if you had no idea about the concept of passage of time? What if you fail to understand and appreciate the structure of a day or a week or a month or a year or seasons? And now imagine a child, a small child, who has no idea, who has no understanding that time exists. Life follows a routine, a structure, a schedule. Who has no idea that it cannot be Sunday all the time. You cannot keep playing all the time. A child who has no patience to wait for or understand the fact that park time can only happen in the evening, who doesn't get the concept of morning, afternoon, evening. A child who's not able to understand, who's so frustrated about the fact that why do ice cream parlor visits only happen at designated times? Mama, मुझे सिर्फ संडे को आइसक्रीम पार्लर क्यों ले जाती है? Imagine a child, a small child, a 2 year or a 3 year old child who just cannot tolerate and simply doesn't understand at all why his mother wants him to sit and do an activity rather than let him just jump and play and do whatever he wants the entire day. Imagine a child who's going crazy, who's just not able to ask or understand that ये जो काम मैं अभी कर रहा हूँ, मैं जो बीज लगा रहा हूँ, या मैं जो एक्टिविटी कर रहा हूँ, या मैं जो पढ़ाई कर रहा हूँ, वो कितनी देर तक लास्ट करेगी, और वो पूछ भी नहीं पा रहा। उसे ये भी नहीं पता कि इसके बाद क्या आएगा, ये एक्टिविटी कब खत्म होगी, क्या इसके बाद मुझे कोई अच्छी चीज मिलेगी, कोई अच्छी एक्टिविटी मिलेगी, कोई अच्छा खाने का चीज मिलेगा। And a child who's not able to understand when his mother will allow him to play. Will she even let him play? Imagine a child who cannot even plan how to play with his own toys, जिसकी executive functioning and motor planning इतनी developed नहीं है. Imagine a child who cannot understand and even remember the simple steps of brushing his teeth. ना उसे पता है that ये वो टाइम है जब उसे टीथ ब्रश करना है, ना उसे स्टेप्स याद रह पा रहे हैं, ना उसे ये समझ आ रहा है कि उसे ब्रश क्यों करना है. He has no clue at all why he needs to brush every day. Imagine a child who has no idea at all what you expect of him when you take him to school or the doctor's visit. What is he supposed to do when he goes to school? How is he supposed to behave? Imagine a child who was playing fine one day and you just picked him up and you decided that you wanted to send him to play school today. Who has no idea that he's supposed to sit down even for 5 minutes in the classroom, a child who has never sat down for 5 minutes, who has no clue at all why he cannot be at home today. Now imagine a child who's not well and you just pick him up and take him to the doctor's appointment. It's a fearsome, scary place for him. Why is somebody poking him a syringe? Now imagine a child for whom structure, clarity does not exist. An entire day with a structure, with a schedule does not exist. Who has no concept of it. For whom everything is sudden and unpredictable. A child who even lacks the motivation and understanding to excel at anything. What you then get is a child for whom life is nothing but chaos. And until and unless you understand the problems that this child is facing, how can you look for solutions? So, these all facts that we discussed in the above slide are true for our children on the spectrum. Their inability to comprehend the passage of time, their inability to wait for the good things to happen, their lack of flexibility, their rigidity, their inability to sit still at one place are all facts for our children on the spectrum. Because of which we see some of the most common problems associated with these children on the spectrum or even ADHD. Apart from emotional and behavioral issues, some of the very core issues of autism are exacerbated because of the above issues. Communication issues, play skills, stereotypical and repetitive behaviors, academic delays, delays in attaining independence, they might all happen and they might all take an extreme toll on the providers. Financial issues, and these are just to mention a few issues which happen because of the various reasons for chaos that we just discussed. So, if a child is constantly battling this chaos and all the reasons associated with it, how can you expect him to attain any target, make any connections, acquire any language, or any kind of proficiency in any activity of daily living? This child of yours is in a state of constant turmoil. If a child is constantly battling his lack of clarity of time, place, expectations, and people, how can you expect him to follow a schedule and behave appropriately? These are the kind of children who will manifest a number of meltdowns, who will manifest a lot of anxiety, who will manifest a lot of behavioral issues. If a child has not been adequately prepared and warned about an impending doctor's visit, how can you expect him to sit still during an exam? उसे पता ही नहीं है कि वो डॉक्टर के पास क्यों आया है, कितनी देर रुकेगा, डॉक्टर्स एंड नर्सेज उसके साथ क्या क्या करेंगे. जब फिजिकल एग्जाम चल रहा है, then what all is going to happen? Are they just going to take the temperature? Or are they perhaps going to check his chest? What all is going to happen? He has no clarity. He has no clarity about when this is going to end. If you haven't informed the child about how his day is going to look like, how can you expect him not to be restless and be calm and organized and not be hyperactive throughout the day? How can you expect a child to easily go through transitions if he doesn't even know how many transitions he's going to face? So, where lies the solution to these problems? Now that you have identified all the problems and you have also identified the reasons for chaos and the resultant issues because of the chaos, how can we make our children thrive in the midst of this chaos? So, first of all, by providing them a visual structure. Remember, our children learn best when visuals are used in their targets. Through visual schedules, calendars that are followed daily, monthly, weekly, task schedules, maybe by penciling in and giving them timely warning about impending monthly visits, such as a doctor's appointment. By keeping their life as predictable as possible. By using maybe sand timers or a simple count method 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, park time over. This will ease transitions. It will allow them to know how long an undesirable task would last. और उन्हें कितना वेट करना पड़ेगा before something they want, अगले पार्क टाइम के लिए उन्हें कितनी देर वेट करना पड़ेगा, और ये जो पर्टिकुलर ऑनगोइंग पार्क टाइम है वो कितनी देर में खत्म हो जाएगा. We can use a number of timers for that. We can use a simple count method or a sand timer or a timer on the mobile phone. This will give them some amount of predictability. This will ease some amount of their transition. We can tell them very, very clearly what they are required to do at every point of time. What is that specific activity that needs to be done in a certain manner? Example, playtime on the blue mat at 4 in the evening for 20 minutes. That will allow the child to be focused and not just roam around the entire day. That will ease some amount of his restlessness and hyperactivity. We can also help our children by breaking down seemingly bigger tasks, tasks that might appear absolutely fathomless to them. It might be something very simple as brushing teeth, जो हमारे बच्चे lack of executive functioning and motor planning की वजह से adequately नहीं कर पाते हैं. We can break down that particular task into another micro schedule. Have a bigger schedule and then have a small micro visual schedule, maybe in the bathroom, जिसे हम task analysis भी कहते हैं. Break down a bigger task into smaller tasks. This will serve, this will, kind of work around their poor executive functioning. वो उसके लिए उनको support करेगा. And it will set them for success rather than, having repeated failures and a greater time for acquiring a target. It will serve as a visual reminder of what needs to be done for discrete steps, for very discrete things happening throughout the day. We could keep our children motivated by making it very clear to them. They might feel anxious about doing things or activities that they don't like to do too much. So, if we can give them a constant visual reminder about what goodie is awaiting them at the end of a, say, undesirable task, it might help them to focus better. And most importantly, it might help them stay motivated enough to be able to finish the task with any amount of precision and clarity. Monthly events, enjoyable or otherwise, could be penciled in into the calendar. That would, it would allow the children, बच्चे easily उसे देख पाएंगे कि उनकी favorite activities कब होने वाली हैं. When is the ice cream parlor visit going to happen? What point of the month? It will be there in front of them. They will not have anxiety issues and frustration, especially when they are not able to ask, Mama, hum ice cream parlor kab jayenge? So it will ease that anxiety and allow them to wait patiently for a favorite thing to happen. And it will also allow them to be adequately prepared about undesirable events happening throughout the month. We could pencil in movement breaks. Rather than a child who is in school and who is fidgety and hyperactive and not able to concentrate and focus because he needs to move, we can give him a visual reminder. We can tell him that, okay, ये एक्टिविटी फिनिश करने के बाद आपको मूवमेंट ब्रेक मिलेगी और इतनी देर तक आप चुपचाप फोकस करके क्वाइटली अपना काम फिनिश कर सकते हैं. So that is the importance of giving a movement break to a child who is restless and hyperactive in school. We can set up independent workstations for our children. Constantly, our children are worried about when the set of activities that have been given to them in school are about to finish. एक काम कर लिया, दूसरा काम कर लिया, अब और कितना करना है? Verbal instructions and verbal reminders don't, register with them as well as visual reminders. So, an independent work schedule could allow our children to track themselves and stay focused and not be distracted and complete the desired task with a lot of precision and perfection, rather than a child who has no idea what activity is going to come next, whether that particular activity is something that he's going to like or he's not going to, you know, it's not something he likes to do so much, rather than a child who suddenly gets destabilized by getting an activity that that he doesn't like too much. That will also serve as a reminder of what goodie awaits him at the end of all his activities. An independent visual schedule for independent workstation allows the child to become independent, builds his self-esteem and confidence. He's picking up the activity as per the visual schedule, finishing it and keeping it back in the finish basket. Moreover, it also allows the supervisors and the caregivers some amount of free time when the child is able to follow an independent work schedule on his own. So, what exactly is a visual schedule? It is a pictorial representation, it is a constant visual reminder. वो constantly, it is just something that is there on the wall, or it is something that is kind of carried along with the child on a board or in a binder with pictures of activities or steps that are to be expected at a certain time place. So they can be about what to expect in a particular situation. महीने में कब डिजायरेबल इवेंट्स आने वाले हैं या कब अनडिजायरेबल इवेंट्स आने वाले हैं. जब अनडिजायरेबल इवेंट्स आने वाले हैं, सपोजिंग द चाइल्ड हैज टू गो टू द डॉक्टर, what all is going to happen at the time of the doctor's visit? That is constantly in front of the child in the form of a schedule, and the child is mentally and physically prepared for it. What's going to happen throughout the day? Maybe something is going to change in the week. Slowly, the child will get a concept of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Sundays are holidays. Slowly, he'll get the concept of the fact that Junes are vacations. Slowly, he'll get concept of the fact that maybe, in January, February, we have winters when we wear woolen clothes. So it will prepare him for the passage of time. The visual schedules for various discrete tasks, such as brushing, they serve as a form of task analysis. When we have a micro schedule inside the school, a bigger schedule at home where we have penciled in school, and then a micro schedule for all the activities that are going to happen at school, that will again help to prepare and give him certain amount of structure and clarity regarding things that are going to happen, good or bad. This इस पर्टिकुलर शेड्यूल के साथ हम लोगों को भी इंट्रोड्यूस कर सकते हैं, टाइम को भी इंट्रोड्यूस कर सकते हैं, प्लेसेस को इंट्रोड्यूस कर सकते हैं, कौन सी टीचर क्लास लेंगे. जब हम शॉप जाएंगे, then which shopkeeper are we going to meet? If you tell him that you need to go to the shop today in the evening, you can introduce him to all steps of buying things by following a visual schedule. Who is going to visit throughout the day? Especially for people or events that the child does not appreciate too much, these visual reminders will serve to prepare him and will allow less amount of behaviors to surface. These visual schedules will allow our children to wait patiently for desirable events to happen and tolerate undesirable events, knowing that something good is going to happen at the end of it. It would also serve them as motivation to keep on doing the ongoing activity with a certain amount of focus and calmness. knowing that something good is going to happen at the end of it. And especially since our children are visual learners, children with ASD learn by multisensory learning maximally. So it will serve to help them, it will serve to capitalize on something that is their strength and work around their weaker aspects. And how do we make a visual schedule? Well, it has to be individualized for each and every child. Like everything, like all other targets that we do for our children with ASD, that depend upon the child's age, his current level, the cognitive level, the ability to understand various aspects of the visual schedule, and whether or not he has had any prior exposure to it. How do we make it? We can take photos of the child, click the pictures, or we can take photos off the internet. We can make our own drawings that represent a particular activity or a person. We can even take objects, such as for brushing, we can take a brush. For bigger children, lists can be used, which they can tick on their own. हमारा अल्टीमेट एम यही होता है हमारे बच्चे इतने इंडिपेंडेंट हो जाएं that they are able to make their own lists and then slowly check off the items of the list. Nowadays, we have wonderful apps that can be customized and the child's own lists made. So, to make the very basic visual schedule, usually for beginners, we have a visual schedule that is made out of a chart sheet, a rectangular chart sheet that we paste a chart paper over it, and then we get Velcro. There are various sites which offer both Velcro strips and Velcro dots, over which we can place these objects or drawings or photos, or even wooden strips. Wooden strips would serve as mobile visual schedules that could be taken anywhere where the child was, and he could be made to follow the visual schedule. Or even binders. For bigger children, even binders work. So, for example, we can make a visual schedule by objects that represent that the child is very clear about. Now, with objects, we need to remember that these objects can only be those which the child has prior exposure with. Or if not, कुछ amount of pairing बनानी पड़ेगी उस particular object के साथ. जब आपने कंघी का ऑब्जेक्ट या कंघी का शेड्यूल पॉइंट कराया है, then you'll have to comb the child's hair so that he forms a pair that every time my mother makes me point to this particular object on the visual schedule, she combs my hair. Right? So, उन ऑब्जेक्ट्स के लिए जिनके लिए पेयरिंग नहीं बनी है, स्लोली पेयरिंग बन जाती है. एंड अगर कोई दूसरे ऑब्जेक्ट्स हैं जिनके लिए ऑलरेडी पेयरिंग बनी हुई है, then we need to collect those objects, to gather those objects before beginning the child on the visual schedule. Or we can have actual photos. Again, you'll need to actually click the photos of the child. जब भी कोई एक्टिविटी बच्चा कर रहा है, तब हमें उसकी फोटो क्लिक करके पहले से रखनी होगी, so that we can later utilize it in the form of our visual schedule. Or even internet based icons are good enough, but then again हमें याद रखना होगा that एक pairing बनानी है with that particular icon, और वो icons और वो objects और वो photos जो हम use कर रहे हैं for indicating various activities on the visual schedule for a few days need to be kept constant, so that the kids are able to associate it with a specific activity. अगर ये वाली फोटो है जिसमें मैं स्पेगेटी खा रहा हूँ, जिसमें मैं मैगी खा रहा हूँ, तो मुझे मैगी मिलने वाली है. अगली बार हम मैगी का फोटो नहीं लगाएंगे. We'll only keep the photo of the child eating Maggie. Point being, we'll keep the various objects or photos representing the activity fixed. Important thing to remember is that we need to begin slow. In the beginning where we are just beginning to start the visual schedule, it has to be a very, very slow process. Maybe schedule just for 2 hours of the day. एंड उन 2 घंटों में अगर हमने 2 घंटे का ये शेड्यूल बनाया है, से फ्रॉम 9 to 11 in the morning, schedule in more of the favored activity. Play. Just keep a play card, begin with a play card, make the child point to the play card and make him play. Or if it is not play, then anything else that he really loves doing. And then that card will go into a finished pocket in the bottom of the visual schedule, and then he will go back and point to another activity which is a relatively neutral activity such as eating. हम बहुत ही फेवरेट एक्टिविटी के साथ अगर बहुत स्ट्रेसफुल एक्टिविटी के साथ पर चले जाएंगे तो ऑब्वियसली ट्रांजिशन डिफिकल्ट होता है. So what we try to do is go from a favorite activity to a slightly neutral activity and then to another activity that might be stressful. And even after the stressful activity, the child is able to see that I'm going to get something good. So a lot of planning has to go into making the schedule, have a good mix. So anyway, in the beginning, it has to be a very, very basic schedule. Begin with 2 hours. And then later on, we can go on to have a schedule for the entire day. It can be a horizontal schedule or a vertical schedule. We just need to have a pocket at the end of it which signals the ending of an activity. And the child has to be initially prompted to pick up the first card on the schedule, to point at it, and then go and do the particular activity. And once the activity is over, say brushing is over, then come back, take out the card, and put it in the finish pocket, either vertically placed visual schedule or a horizontally placed visual schedule. So we can have a visual schedule with time mentioned on it, or one that has no time mentioned on it, and again it will depend upon the child's current level. So apart from a schedule which is there for a limited time of the day, the ideal is to progress from a schedule for say for 2 hours, then for an entire day, then a schedule where the child is able to see what is going to happen throughout the week, और धीरे धीरे प्रोग्रेस करके हम ऐसे शेड्यूल के ऊपर जाएं जो शायद पूरे एक महीने का एंटायर इवेंट्स, द रेगुलर वंस, द नॉन रेगुलर वंस, सबको डिपेक्ट करता है. Apart from a schedule like this, we can have several micro schedules, several visual schedules, say in the school, and even in the school for activities such as visiting the toilet in the school. Inside the toilet, we can have another visual schedule that also depicts how the child is supposed to wash his hand. So visual schedules can be, very simple basic ones. You can have a single visual schedule or you can have multiple visual schedule. You can have one that is mobile or you can have one that is fixed to the wall. It can be varied. And everything depends upon the child's current level and age. And we have to have a slow progression. Of course, there are advantages to each of them. With a bigger schedule, like for a month, we can pencil in sudden undesirable events also. That is not possible if you have, say, a weekly schedule. In a weekly schedule, which is a little more elaborate, आप लोगों की भी फोटो लगा सकते हो. से अगर टीचर्स चेंज हो रहे हैं and you feel that टीचर का चेंज होना would be stressful for the child, you can just paste a picture of the teacher and mention to the child that this teacher would be teaching in school on that day. Right. So the schedule can be one, like we discussed earlier, it can be a micro schedule for when the child is going to school, or it can be a visual schedule for the doctor's visit also. In the monthly schedule, हमने pencil in कर दिया है that this particular day is going to be a doctor's appointment day. Slowly, the child is being made to see the date and appreciate the fact that in so many days, a doctor's appointment is coming up. A couple of days before the doctor's appointment is due, we can start making him look at the schedule of things that are going to happen on the day of the doctor's visit. जब वो डॉक्टर के पास जाएगा, he'll have to take a bus, He'll have to wait patiently. A nurse will come, she'll take his weight, she'll take his temperature, then the doctor will come. The doctor will use a stethoscope, she'll look into his mouth, look into the ears, she might talk to the parents, and then it will all be over. So the child has predictability, the child has clarity, it has prepared him, it has not been a sudden, unpredictable onslaught, and our job is done. This can happen for any sudden event or any event that the child has not been priorly exposed to. So, various kinds of visual schedules might be there. We can have a very, very small visual schedule, something that acts as reinforcement. For example, that after the doctor's visit, you will be allowed to go to the playground, or after work, you will get playtime. So this serves as a visual, a constant reminder. जहाँ पे बच्चा काम कर रहा है, we can have the card right in front of him, right over there, where he is doing his work time on his table. He sees that he is working, and at the end of work, he's going to get playtime. That allows him to be focused. वो आराम से बैठ के फोकस होके डिटर्मिनेशन के साथ हैप्पी होके मोटिवेशन के साथ अपना काम फिनिश कर पाएगा. So these serve as reminders. These serve as reinforcements also. Reminders of good things to happen after maybe say undesirable activities. Now for bigger kids, we can, like we discussed, have binders also. The advantage with binders is that they are mobile, they can be carried anywhere. You can have a visual schedule fixed to the wall for your child at home, and maybe for the school, they can have a binder. So we can mix and match the kinds of visual schedules that we are using. Everything will depend upon the child's current level and his ability to tolerate and adapt to the extent and the variety of the visual schedules. बहुत बड़े बच्चे होते हैं, they are also able to use apps. They become so independent that वो अपना लिस्ट प्लान कर पाते हैं, वो अपने लिस्ट को चेक कर पाते हैं और अपने आप को ऑर्गेनाइज्ड रख पाते हैं थ्रू आउट द डे, which makes them totally independent. There are sometimes, certain times, certain visual schedules that you will see which have flaps. So checkboxes, binders, lists, and also flaps. These flaps close as the activities finish. So summarizing, how do visual schedules help children on the spectrum? Communicating something visually. Children with ASD, they are visual learners. They are able to appreciate and understand things that are represented to them, that are shown to them, that are taught to them visually much, much better. So it sets them up for success. एक visual schedule, rather than just telling them verbally, बोल के कोई बात समझाने से अगर हम विजुअली उन्हें कॉन्स्टेंटली दिखा रहे हैं दैट पूरे दिन में क्या होगा, या किसी भी काम को करने के स्पेसिफिक टास्क, स्पेसिफिक स्टेप्स क्या हैं, तो वर्बल इंस्ट्रक्शंस आर फ्लीटिंग. वर्बल इंस्ट्रक्शंस दिमाग से निकल जाते हैं. विजुअल रिमाइंडर्स आर कॉन्स्टेंटली देयर. सो इट सॉर्ट्स देयर वर्ल्ड आउट टू अ ग्रेट डिग्री. उनको क्लैरिटी मिलती है, उनको स्ट्रक्चर मिलता है, उनको एक्सपेक्टेशंस क्लियर हो जाते हैं. और जब उनका केओस कम होता है, जब उनकी एंजाइटी कम होती है, देन वो स्पेसिफिक टास्क को मच फास्टर लर्न करते हैं. जब आप किसी टास्क को छोटे छोटे स्टेप्स में डिवाइड करके सिखाते हैं और एक विजुअल रिमाइंडर कॉन्स्टेंटली सामने रहता है दैट ये वाला पर्टिकुलर टास्क ब्रशिंग मुझे ऐसे 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 करनी है, तो उनकी एंजाइटी कम होती है, तो वो टास्क को फास्टर लर्न करते हैं, वो इंडिपेंडेंट बनते हैं, तो उनका सेल्फ एस्टीम बढ़ता है, उनमें कॉन्फिडेंस आता है. When you pencil in events in the visual schedule that are going to happen suddenly, it prepares them. Or even events that they don't like too much, then it prepares them for, it eases the transition. In any case, ASD में बच्चों में एक से प्ले से डिनर पे भी जाने में, because it is a transition, issues हो सकते हैं, because they have certain amount of rigidity. They don't like to, do something else. They would much rather prefer doing whatever they're doing currently. So if you give them a visual reminder also, if you give them a timeout and say that, okay, count of 10, check visual schedule, they know that at the end of the count of 10, they have to go and check the visual schedule, and it might have something, say, undesirable also. So by the time you have finished your count of 10, the child is mentally prepared. And it decreases behaviors and meltdowns to a great degree. Kids can build their own schedules, bigger kids. They can actually help when they know that the parent is predictable, when they know that the parent has given them clarity and structure and is actually sticking to the visual schedule. They need to understand. बच्चों को ये समझना ज़रूरी होता है. That is why we say that we should not change the visual schedule in front of the children, और जो एक्टिविटीज़ हैं विजुअल शेड्यूल में वो हमें कराने की जितनी पॉसिबल हो सके कोशिश करनी चाहिए, अनटिल अनलेस हमारा बच्चा बीमार है या अनटिल अनलेस हमारा बच्चा बिल्कुल फल्मिनेंट मेल्टडाउन में है, हमें कोशिश करनी चाहिए कि हम विजुअल शेड्यूल को 95% ऑफ द टाइम्स फॉलो करें. So if the child is able to understand that ठीक है, ये visual schedule is something that is sorting my life, they enjoy building it with their parents. And slowly this builds their own executive functioning skills, and obviously it makes them independent, and it makes them understand that life is a complex thing. It is not just play, and life follows structure and routine and predictability. And with that predictability comes certain sudden events for which also we need to be prepared. And with the responsibility and independence also comes self-esteem. The kids, after following visual schedule, get a sense of accomplishment. And to introduce the concept of suddenness, sometimes what we do is जब बच्चे थोड़े बड़े हो जाते हैं, we can make them look at the visual schedule in the morning and then suddenly change something by in placing a card, say a change card, or say a card which just says, oh, you know, something like that. That will prepare them for sudden things happening in the middle of the visual schedule. Usually, if we want to teach the children in the beginning that changes happen, and you have to be prepared for changes also, because rigidity being a part of our children with ASD, we don't want them to become totally rigid about the schedule. We also want them to have some amount of flexibility regarding sudden things. So we expose them to sudden things slowly after, say, 6 months or 1 year of following the visual schedule by introducing a specific card. And for maximum success, what we do is that for the change activity or the card that or the item that we want to be associated with the change, we add a favored thing. So supposing in the morning आपने school लिखा था, but you know that it's a holiday. So in the middle of the visual schedule, say about at 9 o'clock when the child was about to go to school, you can suddenly write park time. So he will bear the change initially. He'll be better able to tolerate initially अगर आपने शुरू में change के साथ कोई favorable activity pair की है. And slowly we can also introduce the change card for undesirable activities, hoping that the child will be able to tolerate them too. And most importantly, if your child is able to follow the visual schedule and understand the things that are going to happen throughout the day and be okay about them, and become sort of independent enough able to follow the visual schedule on his own, it is a big, big relief for the caregivers. So how do we make the visual schedule? Obviously, decide the activities that you want to add. Start slow. Start with a small part of the day. Slowly expand the day. Decide whether you want to use the objects or the photos or the internet. Decide whether you want to use lists or binders or boards. Decide whether you want it to be on an app. Try to mix and match the preferred activities Always keep a neutral activity after a favored activity and then say a stressful activity. Always give relaxing activities after stressful activities. It can be on anything, it can be multiple, it can be on the study table, in the kitchen, in the bathroom, in the school, a single visual schedule for the entire day or one for the month, depending upon the complexity of the child's activities, depending upon his alertness, depending upon his proficiency level. It can be of multiple types. Have a finish pocket at the end always to signal the end of an ongoing activity. Ease transition to the next step. Supposing the child has pointed to playtime, and you know that the playtime is now going to lead to, say, bath time, then before the end of playtime, say whatever timer the child is following, whether it's a phone or it's a count system, give him adequate preparation for the next item on the visual schedule. Count of 10, check schedule, you will count to 10 and slowly guide the child towards the visual schedule and make him end the ongoing activity, which was playtime. Take out the card, put it into the finish pocket, and point to the next activity, which right now is bath time. Beginning में physical prompts required होते हैं, but slowly we can just give a count and say verbally check schedule, and the child will now have to go and check schedule accordingly. First, he'll take out the card of the ongoing activity, put it in the finish pocket, and then point to the next activity. Slowly, we will also introduce variability in the visual schedule to introduce the concept of suddenness. The ultimate aim, always is to make the child independent so the pictorial visual schedule can go from the wall to a binder and to written lists. What are the steps to follow visual schedule? A lot of the steps might be clear to you by now. First, the child has to be prompted physically to check schedule. Make the child point to the upcoming activity. Sometimes what we do is we even make the child carry the card. Say the child was supposed to go and get dressed, we can make the child take the card for the bathroom or getting dressed into the bathroom, or say the work time card into the workroom. In the morning, in the beginning, what we do is make the child appreciate the entire visual schedule visually. This is going to happen, then this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, then this is going to happen. Slowly, he gets an idea, a brief idea. Of course, the visual schedule is always there on the wall to remind him, but still, it gives him kind of a broad idea of what all is going to happen throughout the day. So when the ongoing activity is over, the child comes. Initially, we will prompt. Later on, fade the prompt. Full physical prompt will slowly be faded. The child will place the card into the finish pocket and maybe tick or point at the next activity. Use a warning before the next activity, fade prompts, and some visual prompts for sudden changes can also be introduced. Of course, there are going to be disruptions. Of course, there are going to be failures. Of course, you're going to have lots of problems. But always remember that a visual schedule has to be followed without fail, and it will help the child without fail. Just remember a few basic points. Try not to change the visual schedule in front of the child in the beginning so that he knows that something that is there on the visual schedule will happen. But we always have to be aware of our child's uh, illnesses or other such issues that don't allow even normal neurotypical people or adults to follow the schedule. So that has to be taken into consideration, particularly with our children who have a few more other issues, who have a few more issues in contrast to regular or neurotypical people. So but a proper balance has to be there for between sticking to the schedule and giving in to the demands of the child or the escape behaviors of the child. Be prepared for a lot of resistance in the beginning. That is why always start slow. Take as much time as possible. If you feel that it's going to take at least a month for you to progress to 4 hours, that's fine. But for those 2 hours, try to follow the schedule as much as possible so that some amount of clarity, structure, consistency can be introduced right now, today itself. And please understand that it is the key to independence. You know, it cannot be mentioned enough how important following a visual schedule is for our children. It is highly important, it is vital, it is imperative to their success. If you haven't begun this journey of your child having to follow a visual schedule, please begin now as soon as possible. And trust me that it will lay down the foundation for your child's independence like nothing else will. Make him achieve his targets with so much ease once the chaos in his mind is settled. It will reduce his behaviors and meltdowns and calm him down like nothing else will. So, best of luck and happy scheduling.